Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
What's up, PGF Nation? We are back. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving weekend. Lane Kiffin becomes the next head coach at LSU. The college football playoff picture is coming into focus after rivalry week. Are the Chiefs going to miss the playoffs? Will the Cowboys make the playoffs? The Bears have the best record in the NFC. A lot to cover today, but I'm your host, Brad Fowler. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Alex Higdon. Alex, how was your Thanksgiving?
Good Thanksgiving. Food is always good. Still eating leftovers, but you know the key thing, those leftovers need to be gone by tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I still have a little bit to get through myself, but love the turkey sandwiches and all the stuff left over. You got to love Thanksgiving, man. The food, the football. It might be my favorite holiday of the whole year. I mean, it really is. A holiday that revolves around great food and football. It's hard to beat. It really is. Let's jump into it, Alex. We got a lot to get to. I want to start in the NFL. Like I said, we got some big college football news as well to get to. But the LA Rams losing to the Panthers, this is a big upset because, look, the Rams were looking like the best team in football, the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl. Matt Stafford is the odds-on favorite to win the MVP. This team was rolling. I don't think anybody really thought the Panthers had a shot in this game, and they pull off a big upset. I got to give a lot of credit to Bryce Young, 2 fourth-down touchdown throws that were clutch. Panthers ran the ball. They had a balanced attack. And the big takeaway for me was Carolina looked like they belonged in this game. It didn't look fluky. You know, the defense was great. They were the more physical team. They created turnovers, and they're alive now for that NFC South title.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I've been talking all season long about Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but here come the Panthers bringing up the rear, pause. But like you said, when you look at this game, it's evenly matched with the exception, for the most part, of the time of possession. The Panthers had it for 36 minutes, while the Rams only had it for 24. Look at the rushing, 152 for the Rams, 164 for Carolina, 243 and 2 TDs, 206 and 3 TDs for the Carolina Panthers. But the big difference here, the 2 turnovers, Matthew Stafford, I believe he threw 25 touchdowns in a row without having an interception. In this game, he had 2 interceptions. Doesn't change my pick for MVP, but 2 interceptions during this game. And the Panthers defense, despite 2 years ago kind of getting rid of basically everybody from the old regime, this defense has really stepped up. And Bryce Young, a guy who we all thought was too short or probably not going to make it through his first contract, is right now showing improving in his 3rd year, which is the key year that I always talk about, that quarterbacks need to start to prove to you who they are. It's proven that he perhaps is the franchise quarterback for this team.
Bryce Young was lights out on 3rd and 4th down. On those big downs, man, he came up big for this team. Like you said, they won the turnover battle. They controlled the clock. I got to give a lot of credit to Dave Canales, because this is a pretty mediocre Panthers roster, and here they are at 7-6 and absolutely in the mix in the South. So you're right. I think Bryce Young, that 5th-year option, is absolutely a real possibility. I think Dave Canales definitely earned himself another year as the Carolina coach going forward, because it looks like they're moving in the right direction right now. Let's shift to Texans-Colts. Got a lot of big games to get to, but this was a game that kind of jumped out because this became a really big matchup in the AFC South. This team was 3-5. They've won 4 straight. They're starting to look a little bit like a poor man's Denver Broncos. Elite defense. And the offense can do just enough. And as long as they don't turn it over, this team is tough to beat.
Yeah, Brad, you know what's interesting about this game? The most interesting thing to me is Indianapolis belongs. This was a close game. Again, everything that you said is absolutely true. But if I just take a macro view look at the game, Indianapolis belongs, because at the beginning of the season, nobody would have thought of this game as a tough game, as a game that we need to be watching in week 12, or rather week 13. To see the Indianapolis Colts versus the Houston Texans. Obviously, C.J. Stroud is back. He's still a little bit iffy, but he did make some plays. Houston's defense putting a lot of pressure on Indianapolis offense. And I think Daniel Jones showed up, and I don't want to say showed out, but he showed up, didn't make mistakes, didn't get sacked. I think he was only sacked maybe once, if I'm not mistaken, made a lot of big throws down the field. Alec Pierce makes trading A.D. Mitchell look like nothing, personally. I don't know where Michael Pittman was during this game, but Alec Pierce showed up. Josh Downs showed up. Jonathan Taylor running against a tough defense. I think he only had about 90 yards on like 22 carries. Thought this game was evenly matched, which is what I thought.
One touchdown can change everything. The crowd, the momentum, the game itself. It never gets old. Feel that same rush with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Missouri listeners, listen up. DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in the Show Me State. Here's the best part. New customers bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code PINTGLASS. That's code PINTGLASS. Bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, pass-through of per-wager tax may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer. The countdown is on. Holiday shopping season is officially here. Uncommon Goods takes the stress out of gifting with thousands of unique, high-quality finds you won't see anywhere else. Don't wait. The most meaningful gifts get scooped up fast, and now's the perfect time to cross names off your list. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high-quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the U.S. Many are crafted by independent artists and small businesses, and because they're made in small batches, the best finds can sell out fast. I found a really cool gift on their site, the NFL City Pint Glass Set. It comes with two 16-ounce pint glasses, each with a screen-printed map of your favorite team's home city. The stadium is the centerpiece, surrounded by local streets and landmarks. It's unique, it's personal, and it's the perfect gift for any football fan. Uncommon Goods has something for everyone, from moms and dads to kids and teens, from book lovers, history buffs, and diehard football fans to foodies, mixologists, and avid gardeners. You'll find thousands of new gift ideas that you won't find anywhere else. When you shop at Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses. Many of their handcrafted products are made in small batches, so shop now before they sell out this holiday season. And with every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give back $1 to a nonprofit partner of your choice. They've donated more than $3 million to date. So don't wait. Cross those names off your list before the rush. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/pint. That's uncommongoods.com/pint for 15% off. Uncommon Goods. We're all out of the ordinary.
This is going to be a close game. Nico Collins, big plays showing that why he's a number one receiver in this league. Fourth quarter, I believe it was a third down play. He ended up fighting to get a first down to keep the ball and keep the time rolling in Houston's favor to lead them to the touchdown. I'm still with Indy. I'm still with Indiana Jones. I believe they will still win this division. I don't think the Houston Texans, even though, shout out to them for their comeback. I don't think they have enough that's going to get them into the playoffs, but it's a valiant fight. And CJ Stroud in his third year showing that he too also is a franchise quarterback. But I'm still going to ride with Indianapolis and winning this division and making the playoffs.
Yeah, this was a big win for Houston, though, because it keeps them in the mix. And that defense, they blitzed 39% of the time. That's the most for them in any game this season. I think they kind of took a page from Spags' defense in Kansas City to really try to heat Daniel Jones up, get him off rhythm. It worked at times in this game. He did have some nice plays in this game, but they were definitely kind of able to rattle him a bit. And don't look now, but the Texans are tied with the Jags for the division right now. And look, the Jags won versus the Titans. I don't really want to dive into that game. My only takeaway from that real quick, Alex, was Cam Ward has been terrible. And look, I know he's a rookie and he's on a bad team, but I haven't even seen any flashes from this guy. I mean, the number one overall pick, it's been the quietest number one overall pick maybe ever. And I know they're a bad team. Don't get me wrong. They're a really bad football team. And I know it's not all on him. But I at least expect to see some flashes, some throws, some plays each week where you say, okay, you know what? Young guy looks like he has something. Have you seen anything from Cam Ward this year that makes you think, like, okay, this is a guy we can build around? I know it's his first year. I know he has plenty of time to develop, but man, show me something, right?
Yeah, I know he's a dog and he's a grinder. There's those two things I can say that I feel confident that I know about him. I just think there's a disconnect. They fired the coach somewhere around midseason or whenever they fired the coach. So now there's a disconnect. He's going to be somebody that ends up getting a pass and getting a mulligan, and then we'll see where they go. I don't know if it's going to be Sark that comes from Texas to be this head coach. It'll be interesting to see who they choose as their next head coach. And oh, by the way, they have the number one pick in the draft, who I guess most of us, just from a quarterback-based standpoint, Fernando perhaps will be the overall number one pick. They're going to trade that pick, and they're going to be able to build this team up and get some draft picks where they'll be able to build around him. So they look bad right now, but if they continue on the trend that they're on, they could end up being in a great situation, having that number one pick, being able to move it and do some things.
Yeah, let's talk about the other high-profile rookie quarterback, Shedeur Sanders. Don't need to spend a lot of time on this game. 49ers roll past the Browns, but Shedeur Sanders had some nice throws, touchdown pass. He also missed some open receivers. He overthrew one on a would-be touchdown throw. But I've seen some things from Shedeur that I like. I really didn't like the sideline stuff with Jerry Jeudy. What did you make of Shedeur and that whole issue?
Yeah, I think Jerry Jeudy got his money and he's given up. That's what I feel personally. I feel that he's just given up. Shedeur, he needs to learn to be a leader. I know he likes to smile a lot, but there's something that comes with being a leader and being a quarterback, because you can be a leader from another position, but being the leader and the quarterback, there's something about that needs to have a little bit of sternness, a little bit of firmness to them. But overall, I think they have a good nucleus. Shedeur Sanders, Quinshawn Junkins, Harold Finn, and Isaiah Bond. I think I like the nucleus that they have here, because I don't believe Jerry Jeudy will be long for here, because they're going to try and figure some things out. And quite possibly, they more than likely, too, will be in the race for another quarterback this year as well. So we'll have to wait and see how everything plays out. And perhaps Shedeur Sanders could even be on the move for all we know.
They really need to see something from him these next couple games so that they can kind of help make their decision going into April if they want to keep this guy around or if he's a guy they think can be a building block for them. Like I said, I've seen some good things. I've seen some rookie things. You know, he's a talented guy. I think you're right, though. You hit on something there. I think the biggest question mark for him and the biggest reason why he slid in the draft to begin with was the question marks about the attitude, the leadership, the cockiness, some of those things. We're kind of seeing some of those things already right now in Cleveland. So I think it's fair to say that there needs to be some maturing from this guy if he's going to really take over this role. And I think we've seen that already too. You know, 49ers role in this game. I thought Brock Purdy had a nice bounce back game. I thought he was sharp in this game. He looked a little rusty coming back last week, threw some bad picks, but Niners' 6th road win is the most in the NFL this year. This is the team that we circled out. We both circled this team as a team that would be a big bounce back team this year. And even with all the injuries to so many key guys, I really got to give a lot of credit to Shanahan and this staff for keeping this team so competitive. It's been pretty impressive what they've been able to do. All right, let's shift to the AFC. Bills, Steelers, man, Josh Allen, most rushing touchdowns in NFL history. This guy's been incredible. I've said this a while back, Alex, and when he broke that record this weekend, it just got me thinking more about this. I don't know if there's really a debate anymore. This guy's the best dual threat quarterback we've ever seen. And he's still in the middle of his prime. It's going to be crazy to see the kind of numbers he puts up by the time he's done. And I know he had some iffy throws in the first half, but Cam Hayward, I felt like really poked the bear in this game with some trash talk, got in the face of Josh Allen. They had, went back and forth with an exchange there. And after that happened, it felt like it kind of kicked Josh Allen's game into another gear, and he started to really take over. On the Steelers side, Alex, they have a real problem with Pittsburgh right now. They have a serious problem because this defense is old. They are slow. This is why I was critical of the Steelers this offseason and the moves that they made. You've got two backup tackles for the Bills. And TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward could not do anything in this game to get pressure on Allen, to make any stops in the running game. They got absolutely gashed. You look at Aaron Rodgers, he looks like an old man playing quarterback. This is a guy that I thought was washed when they picked him up. I said, you don't bring in a veteran quarterback like this unless you think he gets you over the hump. I never thought that deal made sense. I know he's probably been the best quarterback they've had in 5 years, which is crazy, but it's still clearly not enough. Steeler fans are starting to turn on this franchise, and they're starting to turn on Mike Tomlin and this team right now. Fire Mike Tomlin chants breaking out in the middle of this game at home. Like I said, the Bills rushed for 249 yards. That's the most ever given up at Heinz Field. Absolutely gross. If you're a Steelers fan, you have this overpriced, overrated defense. Where do you start here with Pittsburgh? Because look, it's not shocking the Bills come in and win this game. I think it's just shocking the free fall that we've seen from the Pittsburgh Steelers and how bad it's gotten this year. What do you do if you're Pittsburgh here? Because this plug a quarterback in, go with a veteran defense, this kind of model that they've been working with the last couple of years is clearly not working. And I think they've really got to tear this thing down and start over and get younger at a lot of different positions. And I think that's going to be difficult to do.
Well, the first place I start, the Steelers fans, I understand that these are the people that you see between the players and the coach. I start at the front office. I looked at their draft going back to 2017 was the last time they picked a guy that lasted and is still on his team. In 2017, they picked TJ Watt. The next year, this is just the first round, they picked Terrell Edmonds. 2019, Devin Bush Jr., he got hurt. Okay, cool. 2020, Chase Claypool. 2021, Najee Harris. 2022, Kenny Pickett. 2023, Broderick Jones. He's okay. 2024, Fontenot, we'll kind of wait for him. And 2021, Derek Harmon. They haven't been drafting well. We can say what we want to say about Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has cleaned up the mess that this offensive line is by himself. This offensive line is not good. I don't know when the Steelers have not been able to run the ball. And this is not coaching. This is a matter of who you chose on your team. You went and got a guy that we thought was a top 5 guy in Caleb Johnson. Najee Harris was a solid running back, but you couldn't run the ball. It's not his fault. You don't have a good offensive line. Then you go to the defensive side. You're right. A lot of those players are good, but a lot of those players are 30 plus, right? For the most part, they're heavy hitters or 30 plus. I don't know how old Patrick Queen is. And Peyton Wilson is a guy that's coming on, but hopefully he stays healthy. But they don't have the horses anymore. The way that this team, it's a good idea to bring in Aaron Rodgers, but the team it's a bad setup from the team standpoint. They're not ready to say, okay, you know what, let's make one last push with Aaron Rodgers. No, you're not set up that way. And you're late. You're 3 to 4 years late doing this. This is the front office's fault. I'm not looking at the players and I'm not looking at Mike Tomlin. You had a chance when everybody was training for Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, whatever it was. You didn't take a shot. You decided to go for Mitchell Trubisky. That's what you wanted to do. You didn't take a shot when when everybody was a little bit younger, they had a little bit more left in the tank. You didn't take your shot. You had Ben Roethlisberger for the last 5 years. He was trending down and you let him run your franchise when he got mad that you chose Mason Rudolph in the 3rd round. This is a front office issue. This is not a coach issue. It's not a player issue. This is solely a front office issue.
Yeah, I don't think Mike Tomlin has forgotten how to coach. And don't get me wrong, I understand the fans being frustrated. I understand the frustration there. But I think you're right. This is more of a front office issue because Omar Khan has not done a great job constructing this team. I mean, that DK Metcalf trade, how bad does that look in hindsight? You pay big money for this guy. He's not worth that kind of money. They've missed, like you said, they've missed on a lot of draft picks in the last couple of years. And this was a team historically when Kevin Colbert was there, where they just hit the draft out of the park year after year after year. They always had great rosters, and this roster has holes all over the place, and it's really starting to show. This would have been the year, and I know this just goes against what the Steelers are and what they believe, but I would have honestly gone with Will Howard. You took him late in the draft. I know he's probably not a franchise guy, but just go with the young guy, rip the Band-Aid off, and just see what you have, because who knows? Maybe you find a Brock Purdy type of player late in the draft. But if you don't, you end up losing games and you draft in the top 10 and you try to draft a rookie quarterback the following year. But either way, it kind of gets you on the rebuild track. But once again, they're kind of stuck in the middle of the league where they're probably going to finish right around 500 again. And they're not going to have a great draft pick. And they're not going to be able to have a shot at any of these top quarterbacks again this year. And they're kind of stuck in the same situation. But you're right. It's become a team building issue for them. And I think they've really got to look in the mirror and say, okay, what do we have to do? Because we can't keep running it back like we have been. All right, I mentioned it in the intro. We had a pivotal game, Cowboys-Chiefs, where we've got two teams that are fighting and clawing to try to get into the playoff mix. And I think right now, because of this loss to the Cowboys, I think it's a very realistic possibility that the Chiefs miss the playoffs. This loss to the Cowboys was absolutely huge. And KC is most likely going to have to win the final 5 games of the regular season for them to get into the postseason. Patrick Mahomes even mentioned that in an interview that he did after the game. Look, I'm just going to say it. I did not expect the Cowboys would win the first 2 games of this gauntlet against the Eagles, the Chiefs, and now the Detroit Lions coming up. I thought this is going to be a tough stretch for them, and I thought that 3-game stretch would probably knock them out of the playoff mix. Instead, they've won these first 2 games, and now they have a legit shot to make the playoffs, which is crazy after the start we saw from them. The Chiefs' defense never sacked Dak Prescott once in this game. They couldn't cover Lamb. They couldn't cover Pickens. And, Mahomes had a pretty good game against that Cowboys defense, but it's not enough when your defense can't get stops. Another gut punch for the Chiefs and another scrappy, tough win for the Cowboys. What did you make of this game?
Yeah, this was all, for me, this is all on the defense for the Kansas City. They needed to get some type of stop because all they needed really was one. Because they kept pace with them offensively. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes, 261, 4 TDs, no interceptions. The running game is what the running game is. We've already passed the trade deadline, so it's just going to be Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco for the most part. But defensively, they needed to get at least one step. They did intercept Dak Prescott once, but they gave up 137 yards in total on the ground, which is not a typical Kansas City defense style. Obviously, like you said, they couldn't cover. I didn't expect them to cover both CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, but I expected one to get shut down. So I think the main thing here is Kansas City. We took a look at Brett Veach in terms of what they were drafting to help solidify this team on offense and defense, and what they neglected to do. But they did hit on Rashee Rice, and he showed up in this game. But I still think the Chiefs have a chance to make the playoffs. We're not going to talk about the Chargers, but I spoke about them before. The Chargers, they beat the Raiders, big, whoop-de-doo. But their last 5 games are Philly, Kansas City, Dallas, Houston, and the Broncos. They literally could lose all 5 of those games and end up 8-9. Just like Kansas City can win the next 5 games and end up in the playoffs, to the point that you said, because they have Houston next, the Chargers, Tennessee, Denver, and Vegas. Who has the easiest schedule to you? And who doesn't have injuries? And I don't believe Amarion Hampton is coming back. So I think that it sounds whatever the percentages are, but I'm going to put my money behind Kansas City making the playoffs and the Chargers falling out.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Don't get me wrong, but I do think they're going to have to win out. I don't think they have really any margin for error here, and that's going to be tough. I mean, that's really going to be tough because this Chiefs team is just not the same team. This is not the same team that we saw last year or the year before that. They've clearly taken a pretty big step back here. They just can't win close games. They're 1-6 in close games this year. It's the exact opposite of what we saw last year. I did expect some regression from them. I'll be honest, I thought they'd be better than this. But, yeah, that Cowboys loss was a gut punch. I mean, that was a big, big loss because they really needed that one to kind of give themselves some wiggle room here.
And also now Josh Simmons is out for the season.
Yeah, and they've got the Texans, the Jaguars, and the Chargers up ahead of them in the standings. Now, you mentioned the Chargers, but the other problem is all those teams have a win over the Chiefs right now, so they all hold the tiebreaker. So it's going to be a tough road for them to climb up. I'm never going to count them out until they're officially out, but it is looking pretty grim right now for the defending AFC champs, that's for sure. Let's move to the NFC North. We had a big-time matchup, Packers-Lions. And look, I said it a couple weeks ago on the show. Lions just aren't the same team. And it's starting to really look like this team has taken a big step back. And on the other side, the Packers are just clicking at the right time. Because this offense a few weeks ago just looked like it was off. It looked like they hadn't really found what they wanted to be offensively. Matt LaFleur clearly has tweaked this offense, and they look really sharp. Jordan Love shreds that Lions defense. Micah Parsons had 2.5 sacks, 4 quarterback hits on Jared Goff. He's now got 14 sacks this year. He's been a monster addition for this Green Bay defense. For the Packers, that is. 2 games up against the Bears that really could decide this division. So big-time win for them and a big-time performance from Jordan Love. And Jordan Love's actually going to get my game ball this week, Alex. 4 touchdown passes, no picks, 234 yards. He was lights out. He matched his career high with those 4 touchdown passes. This was a big win for the Packers.
Yeah, and I have to agree. This was Detroit at home as well. This wasn't Detroit in Green Bay, and I think that's key because we know that they're a different team outside. Well, this is them inside. The Micah Parsons trade, he has the stats, 8 tackles, 2.5, and I think 3 tackles for loss. But it's his impact along with everybody else on that defense that's giving them a jolt. On the Detroit side, listen, we said when they lost their coordinators, they were going to have a problem. And we're seeing it's probably, and it's not terrible. It's just that they just don't look as explosive as they did. I mean, we also have to be fair in this game. They lost Amon-Ra St. Brown, who didn't return to the game. So this was that really kind of turned what they would do from a passing standpoint. That turned that around. Obviously, now people can focus more on Jameson Williams, even though he had 7 for 144 on the touch. But this is really the defense of Detroit. Now, their defensive backfield has been decimated. They just got Terrion Arnold back. And respectfully, that's not saying much. If you've been listening to this podcast, we were not high on him coming out. Meek Robinson, gritty player, but he's only 5'8". So you're going to have a lot of those issues. And I believe Kirby Joseph, if I'm not mistaken, was still out from this game, which is where a lot of help they get back on the defensive backfield. And even though Brian Branch, the other safety that's been there doing well, he is limited because he's been dealing with a toe injury. So it's that defensive backfield that they can't get over. I won't go into my Christian Gonzalez rant again, but alas, they're still in the hunt. They still have a chance. They control their own destiny. They finish out with Dallas, the Rams, Pittsburgh, Vikings, and Chicago, which isn't really, and I don't see an easy game there unless the Vikings. Well, yeah, the Vikings will probably be an easy game because who knows will be a quarterback by then. But all those other games, those other teams are fighting for divisional positioning. So they have 5 tough games remaining. So we'll have to see what they look like at the end of the season.
Yeah, and I said it the other week too. The O-line has taken a step back. It's still a very good group. But when you have a guy like Jared Goff, who's a true pocket guy, a guy with very limited mobility, that offensive line is so important for his success. And he just doesn't look like the same guy when he's not sitting in that clean pocket. Defensively, you're right. The secondary has been a mess. They've tried to address it. It still isn't very good. This team is good, but I just don't see them as a contender anymore. So this is going to be a really important offseason for them. It's going to be a really important draft for them to try to fill some of these holes and kind of get back to that level.
They also tried to bring back Frank Ragnow, and he didn't pass his physical, so he will no longer be returning to that offensive line.
Yeah, that's definitely unfortunate for sure. All right, let's move to Bears-Eagles. This was the Black Friday game, the Amazon game, which, by the way, I love that they've done that. It's really nice to have that game when a lot of us are at home after the holiday, of course, still eating leftovers, watching football. It's great to have a game like this, and this ended up being a really good matchup. Bears ran 85 plays and piled up 281 rushing yards against Philly. It was a dominant performance from them. And this is starting to feel a lot more like the 2023 Eagles, who went 10-1, but never could get the offense going consistently. I know you mentioned that weeks ago, Alex, that you said this was starting to feel like the 23 Eagles. Well, it's starting to look a lot more like them as well, because right down the stretch, they're not looking like that team that we saw last year that was just dominant and made the run all the way to the Super Bowl. Look, nothing fluky about this win at all. This Bears team kicked the Eagles' ass at home. They were the tougher, more physical team on both sides of the ball, and that's saying a lot considering how good the offense and defensive lines are for Philly. Caleb Williams still has room to improve, but he made multiple big plays in this game, especially on third down to keep drives alive. That touchdown pass, that to me really flashed the incredible arm talent that we've seen from this guy. And once again, the Eagles are starting to really feel broken right now, especially that offense. And the Bears, look, they might be the best story in the NFL right now, Alex.
Yeah, the Bears are a fun story. I'll say they're the funnest team in the league right now. I already said what I said about Philly, but I'll start with Chicago. Caleb Williams did throw an interception, but that's been my key thing about Caleb Williams is he doesn't turn the ball over. Even though he may go 17 for 45 or whatever it is, he won't turn the ball over. He did in this instance, but I think Ben Johnson realized
one touchdown can change everything. The crowd, the momentum, the game itself. It never gets old. Feel that same rush with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Missouri listeners, listen up. DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in the Show Me State. Here's the best part. New customers bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code PINTGLASS. That's code PINTGLASS. Bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, pass-through of per-wager tax may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer. The countdown is on. Holiday shopping season is officially here. Uncommon Goods takes the stress out of gifting with thousands of unique, high-quality finds you won't see anywhere else. Don't wait. The most meaningful gifts get scooped up fast, and now's the perfect time to cross names off your list. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high-quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the U.S. Many are crafted by independent artists and small businesses, and because they're made in small batches, the best finds can sell out fast. I found a really cool gift on their site, the NFL City Pint Glass Set. It comes with two 16-ounce pint glasses, each with a screen-printed map of your favorite team's home city. The stadium is the centerpiece, surrounded by local streets and landmarks. It's unique, it's personal, and it's the perfect gift for any football fan. Uncommon Goods has something for everyone, from moms and dads to kids and teens, from book lovers, history buffs, and diehard football fans to foodies, mixologists, and avid gardeners. You'll find thousands of new gift ideas that you won't find anywhere else. When you shop at Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses. Many of their handcrafted products are made in small batches, so shop now before they sell out this holiday season. And with every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give back $1 to a nonprofit partner of your choice. They've donated more than $3 million to date. So don't wait. Cross those names off your list before the rush. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/pint. That's uncommongoods.com/pint for 15% off. Uncommon Goods, We're all out of the ordinary.
That this Eagles defense isn't a vaunted defense like it has been in the past. Something that I pointed out coming into the season saying, hey, they lost a lot of it. You just don't lose a Milton Williams and replace him easily. And then you traded Bryce Huff and they say, oh, Nolan Smith is not a full-time player. He's not strong enough on the edge. That was a nice trade they made for Jalen Phillips. Didn't fool me. Got everybody else excited. I wasn't fooled by it whatsoever because the offense still has to do what the offense has to do. But the Bears have been just remaining consistent, getting better. Now, the defense needs to catch back up. This was a good punch in the face for that defense because that offense had been carrying this team for the most part, even though they are leading the league in turnovers in terms of what they do on defense. But what the defense looked like in the beginning of the season and getting after the quarterback, they don't look like right now. But I will say I am having the most fun watching Chicago. My players of the game are both Kyle Monange as well as DeAndre Swift. Monange running for 130 and a touch, and then DeAndre Swift running for 125 and a touch. I think those two guys, like you said, that make up the bulk of that 281 on that Eagles defense was the key to them winning. As for the Eagles, they're still 8-4. So we'll wait to see if the Cowboys can catch the Eagles.
Wow, wouldn't that be crazy? Man, I'll tell you what, especially after how bad the Cowboys looked at the start of the year.
All right, before we move on to college, really quick, exciting game on Sunday night. Most people probably didn't think so because it was the Broncos and Commanders, but the Commanders were right there, blow for blow, with the Broncos, challenging that vaunted Broncos defense. And obviously they had a chance, but with them being 3-8 at the point in time, they went for it on 2 to try and win the game. Overtime, 28-27, but they came up short. And I'm going to say this about the Broncos. This has absolutely nothing to do with the coach. This has everything to do with that Broncos offense. Even though Bo Nix, this is only his second year, the defense will catch up to that rookie quarterback and what they did their first year. So he's not having the best second year, unless he's still going to be that type of quarterback. But however, I just think that offense is going to cause them a problem in the playoffs, and the defense isn't going to make up for the deficit that the offense has.
Yeah, the offense has been a little bit hot and cold this year. They have moments where they're clicking and look really good. And actually, I got to give Bo Nix some credit he made some throws in this game that were unreal. I mean, he had a touchdown pass that was incredible in this game. He had a couple throws that were really highlight level throws. But you're right. They tend to stall out on offense a little too much, and it definitely puts pressure on that defense. But, the defense has been able to answer the bell pretty much every game this year. They've been able to rise up and play big time for them. And it's an elite group. But I got to give a lot of credit to Washington's offensive line. They actually held up pretty well versus that pass rush. Gave Mariota a chance in this game. He actually played a really a heck of a game coming off the bench and gave them a legit chance to win this game. And I got to give credit to Dan Quinn and this staff, because this easily could have been a team that gave up weeks ago, and they're still playing hard. They're still fighting. That's a culture thing. That's when you have a coach and a culture that's in place. And so you've got to be happy from that standpoint if you're a Washington fan, knowing that this is the right guy to lead your team, because they were right in this ballgame. Like you said, overtime, down to the last play, they were going for 2. Ended up being a great game. And look, Sunday Night Football, it's been bad this year. We have had a ton of duds. They haven't had a close game in weeks. So this was big for them from just a rating standpoint to keep people interested in a close game. Finally get one here. Broncos, though, they're in the mix here for the 1 seed right now, which is pretty crazy. But the offense, it's not the consistent, high-flying offense, but as long as they don't turn the ball over and they make enough plays, I do think that defense is good enough that they can beat anybody. All right, Alex, let's shift to some college football. Big rivalry week. Got some games to get to. Got some teams that punched their ticket at the college football playoff. We've got a couple others that are going to be on the fence. Going to be interesting to see some of these bubble teams and where they end up. But first, I want to talk about the Lane Kiffin hire by LSU. They have a 7-year deal. He's going to be making approximately $12 million a year. I don't think it was really about the money, because from all the reports I had seen, Ole Miss was willing to basically match that number or be in the same ballpark. So I don't think it really had a lot to do with that. I just think that he saw LSU as a better opportunity, and I can't necessarily blame him for that. But Alex, I want to ask you, is LSU right now, is it that much better of a job than Ole Miss? And I know that sounds kind of crazy, because historically, yes, LSU is the bigger brand. They have the rich history that Ole Miss doesn't have, and I get that. But right now, Lane Kiffin turned Ole Miss into a better program than the current LSU program. And I think people are overlooking the fact that this is going to be a bit of a rebuild. Now, I know it might be easier to get recruits at LSU than it is Ole Miss, but in the modern NIL era, it's not as cut and dry. I mean, am I crazy here? I don't think the gap between these programs is that sizable. We've seen a lot of coaches in this coaching cycle who had opportunities to go to quote-unquote bigger brands. I'll give you a perfect example. Curt Cignetti at Indiana, right? A historically bad football program that he comes in, builds them up, makes them a legit contender in college football, and then the Penn State job opens up, a traditional blue blood similar to an LSU. You know that they were calling Curt Cignetti, and he said no thanks and takes an extension to stay at Indiana, because I think he looked at it and saying, well, what can I do at Penn State that I can't do here? And so that's my question about this job. You know, what can he do at LSU that he can't do here? And that's not a knock on LSU or anything like that. How big is the gap?
I don't think the gap is big at all. Lane Kiffin, if you just watched how he maneuvered after getting let go from the Raiders, if you just watched how he moved, he went up. I believe he went to USC, then he went down to Florida Atlantic, then he came back around, then he went to Alabama. If you just watch how he snaked his way, and I'm not using snake in a bad way in reference to him, how he snaked his way. The only thing I can say is you're chasing the national title and you believe with the talent that you have access to in Louisiana as a whole, and then what you can do outside of Louisiana, you feel you can build this team faster against the Georgias and everybody else at LSU is the only thing that I have here. I don't have anything bigger than that. You know, not about the money or anything like that. This is simply about him winning a national championship and then probably him just looking at how he's moving to the next level, meaning going up and then going back to the NFL, just looking at how he's moved.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because all the goodwill and the rebuilt image and the 30 for 30 ESPN doc, all that he created at Ole Miss, I think is just right out the window with this decision. And unfortunately, I think it shows that he's still the same Lane Kiffin in the sense that the grass is always greener somewhere else. Because you just mentioned it. The guy has consistently just bounced from program to program to program, trying to find the quote-unquote better job. Like you said, from Tennessee to USC to the Raiders, he always had a job that he thought was better. Clearly, another big job opening comes up that he thinks is better than the one he's at, and he jumps. And it just makes you wonder that if Kalen DeBoer leaves in a couple years or gets let go, is he going to jump to Alabama? If Ryan Day decides to hang it up, or I'm just making up hypotheticals, is there another program that he just says, you know what, I'll go coach at, Clemson. Let's say Dabo Swinney leaves or whatever. Like, is it just going to be a matter of, is there always going to be a better program? Is there always going to be a better job for a guy like Lane Kiffin? It really just has to make you wonder. And here's the other thing. The pressure just got dialed up to 10.
Yep.
Because at Ole Miss, he could have gotten crushed in the first round of the playoffs this year, and nobody really would have cared. Now, I'm not saying Ole Miss fans wouldn't have cared. Of course they care. But my point is that they still would have looked at him in high regard. They still would have said, okay, you know what? Great coach. You've done a great job. He could win 9 or 10 games, never touch a national title at Ole Miss for the next 5 years, and they'd probably put a statue out in front of that stadium of Lane Kiffin. At LSU, if he doesn't win a title in 3 years, that seat is going to be on fire. That is the different level of expectations that now are going to come with this, because Brian Kelly was in year 4. His team goes slightly off the rails again. It looks like they're not going to make the playoff, and boom, he's gone. That's how quickly it changes at a program like this. The expectations are through the roof, fair or unfair. So it's going to be really fascinating now, because he's going to have to turn this thing around in a hurry at LSU.
Really quick before we move on, I just want to talk about the other 3 teams. Alex Goulash goes to Auburn, Ryan Silverfield goes to Arkansas, and John Summerall goes to Florida. A lot of that gets kind of put under the radar because Lane Kiffin was this, apparently this golden goose that's never won a championship anywhere, not even when he was at Alabama, but he's like this golden goose that everybody's chasing that doesn't have the championship pedigree to go to LSU to win a championship, and all these other guys kind of get overlooked. As a Florida fan, I like the John Summerall hire. I thought it was nice. I thought it was a beautiful under the radar pick, and it's going to give him time to grow. He's going to get I think his contract is 5 years. He's going to get at least at minimum 4 years to kind of figure out and say where this team can go. And he's coming to a team that already has a defense. He just has to fix the offense as the offensive coordinator coming from Tulane.
Yeah, and that's the thing about these hires, right? Is it's so easy to, grade these hires and say, this is a slam dunk, this is a questionable hire, blah, blah, blah. But look, we all thought just a few years ago that Brian Kelly was a home run hire. And look how that turned out. We all thought that Lincoln Riley to USC was a home run hire. Now, they've been okay, but I think it's fair to say it's been pretty disappointing based on the expectations we had when he took that job. So we don't know who's going to pan out, who's not. Nobody was throwing a parade for Curt Cignetti when he went to Indiana. No one got fired up when Dan Lanning took the Oregon job. Everyone just said, who, this assistant, right? So a lot of times these hires, we don't know really how any of these are going to pan out, Lane Kiffin included in this. But on paper, I think the John Sumrall hire is quietly, to your point, Alex, a very good hire. It seems like a very good fit. I think he's a very good coach. He's done some really good things at Tulane. Now, can he take it up a notch at the next level? Can he continue to recruit and build a program at arguably the best, conference in college football? That's going to be the next step, right? Because we saw Billy Napier go from the lower ranks up to Florida and couldn't quite cut it. Now the next question will be, can John Sumrall take this program to the next step and get them back to where they want to be? But I do think it's a good hire on paper for sure, and I think it's a good fit. Now the big question is, before we talk about some of these other games, with Ole Miss losing Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss right now, as we know, is squarely in the college football playoffs. And they get the win at the Egg Bowl. Lane Kiffin takes the LSU job. But look, if I'm the committee, I'm not letting Ole Miss in the college football playoff. Because, and I know that's harsh, and I know that's really going to be crushing for those players, and I feel bad for them if that ends up being the case. But this is very similar to what we saw a couple years ago when they left out FSU after they lost their starting quarterback at the end of the season and said, look, that's too big of a piece that you lost on this team for us to take you seriously. And I think you could easily make the case that Lane Kiffin is just as big of a loss to this Ole Miss team, not to mention he's the play caller for the offense. I'm not putting Ole Miss in the playoff. I'm sorry. Like, this is too big of a blow for me to look at you and say you belong in this field. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think there's a realistic possibility they leave them out?
I hadn't thought about this until you mentioned it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the way that they I don't want to say let Florida State, but the way they looked over Florida State after Jordan Travis got hurt could be the same way they look at these guys from Ole Miss. Because if I'm at Ole Miss, they haven't named the replacement yet. So if I'm a player going into his junior year and or senior year, I'm not playing. Why am I playing? I have to protect my talents to go to the next level. And if he's not here, who's coaching this team? What am I doing? I have to consider what I am doing as a player. And you're not going to get my best if I'm trying to figure out, should I or should I not enter the portal? Then that's going to come in. Should I or should I not play so that I'm healthy? When I go into the portal, anything can happen. This is my, I'm looked at as the blue chip in my family to bring generational wealth. There's a lot that's a trickle down effect here, going from Lane Kiffin leaving to the player, to the team, that those guys have to consider. So with that being said, you're right. I wouldn't be surprised if they were bumped. However, that's a hard bump when I believe they're number 6 or number 7. Are they? And the rankings haven't come out yet for CFP, but that's a hard bump to move them up.
And here's the other thing. You mentioned the players. How many of these guys are going to pack up and go to LSU? Because I think he's going to take a lot of these guys with him. We're going to see this Ole Miss roster get gutted here. And it's a mess, man. I really feel bad for Ole Miss. Look, I want to talk about Ohio State, Michigan, because obviously we know this is a huge game, probably the best rivalry in college football. But Ohio State flexed in this game. And they showed why they are, no doubt, in my mind, the best team in college football, the best program in college football. This team looks better than they did last year. And look, this is a big game for Michigan, not just because of the rivalry fact, but if they would have won this game, they could have made a real case to get into the college football playoff. These programs, though, right now, I know Michigan had the history of winning this rivalry multiple years in a row, but these programs are a mile apart right now. And I thought it was obvious on the field just how much better Ohio State was on both sides of the ball. Ohio State has scored between 34 and 48 points in 8 of its past 10 games, and they've allowed more than 10 points just twice all year. I have to give a ton of credit to the Matt Patricia hire. That has been an absolute home run. Brian Hartline taking over as the offensive coordinator has been a home run. Ryan Day pulled all the right strings. When you lose your offensive and defensive coordinators off of a national title team and you've got to replace them, he hit it out of the park this year. They lost a ton of guys to the NFL and graduation last year, and this team might be even better than last year's team. Julian saying, and this guy has been incredible. Ohio State is the clear title favorite, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on what we saw from Ohio State going into this Big Ten championship game against Indiana?
Look, we talked about it maybe about 2 pods ago when we said they are the quietest number one team that we've probably seen in however long. Like, nobody's been talking about Ohio State. This is the first time that we've actually spoken about Ohio State on the pod. We might have spoken about Jeremiah Smith or individual players, but we haven't spoken about them as a team until right now, for the most part, if I'm not mistaken, for all college football season.
Probably the Texas game.
The opening game, right. Right. That's the first time. That's the last time we spoke about them as a team. So I don't know I still don't know who Ohio State is. Yes, this was the rivalry is the rivalry. It's a big rivalry, but Bryce Underwood, a true freshman next year, I believe they have the number one running back. Yeah, they do have the number one running back coming in. They're still going to continue to grow. I don't know if they're going to keep the coach, but as the team and their recruiting is still the same. They're still bringing in the same level of people into the program. So I think this possibly next year could be 27-28 Michigan, for all I know. I still feel like I don't know who Ohio State is. I know who Jeremiah Smith is. I know who Cornell Tate is. Julian's saying, okay. And by the way, you can have your offensive coordinator from last year back because we didn't want him in the Raiders, but that's a whole other story. But I still don't know who Ohio State is truly. I don't know what they are yet. So that's why this playoffs is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I think this game against Indiana is going to be interesting because that's going to be a real test. Indiana is a really, really good football team, and I think that's going to be a big, big time game. This is going to be one of the first times in a very long time that we've had the number 1 and number 2 team playing in a conference title game. So that's going to be a great matchup. But regardless of who wins, those teams are both getting in. But, man, Ohio State just looks like a juggernaut right now. They really do. And you mentioned Bryce Underwood real quick because I said these programs are a mile apart right now, and I think they are. But I still am holding on to my Bryce Underwood stock because I like this young kid. I really do. I think the talent is through the roof. I think another year of development, we're going to see a big jump from him next year. I don't think Michigan's going anywhere. So I don't want to make it seem like, they're suddenly in the dumpster. This is a good program and a good team, and they were right on the brink of making the college football playoff themselves. I won't be surprised if they're back in the playoff next year because, like I said, I think this program is still very good. But yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. I think Ohio State is just on another level this year. Some other teams, Alex, that punched their ticket. Oregon beats Washington. 1 loss all year, only to Indiana. They get in. Oklahoma sneaks past LSU. A lot closer than I think they wanted this game to be, but they punched their ticket and get in. Alabama looked like they were going to cruise past Auburn in the Iron Bowl, but then that game ended up being a little closer than expected, but clearly Alabama is in. They're going to play in the SEC title game against Georgia. That's going to be a fun rematch. Now, Miami beats Pitt. Vandy beats Tennessee. Those are 2 big games, 2 big ranked wins. It's going to be interesting to see, Alex, if either one of those teams gets in the college football playoff because I think they both have a strong case to be made.
Yeah, that whole thing is very interesting between Notre Dame and we talked, pre-production about Notre Dame and Miami. I guess we could say 8 through 12, possibly not. I guess not. Well, let's say 8 through 16. 8 through 16 is going to be very interesting come next week. After next week, if some interesting things happen.
Do you think Miami deserves to be in? They've got the big win over Notre Dame. It looks like Notre Dame is clearly in a position to get in. Miami's kind of one of those bubble teams, but Miami has the head-to-head win, which I think a lot of Miami fans have really been upset about these last few weeks with the rankings, saying, look, we beat them. Why are they ahead of us? And look, there's a solid case to be made about that, but Miami also has 2 pretty ugly losses on their record too.
Right. So I'll say, and this was a conversation in the space that we share, Brad, with Mario, who's a Miami fan, and he brought up a good point. He says, we beat them head-to-head. That's number 1. He said number 2, 3, and 4 is I believe they played 3 similar opponents, and they blew out those opponents while Notre Dame played a lot of those teams closer than they did. So what are we really ranking? Because they did not have a better strength of schedule than Miami. So what are we really looking at? Are we looking at the Notre Dame name, or are we looking at common opponents and the head-to-head? Because if we're looking at common opponents and head-to-head, it shouldn't be a question. Notre Dame should be sitting in the position of on the bubble, and Miami should have a more firm hold on making the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you here. I think the head-to-head has to matter. Now, I know those two losses are a lot worse losses than what Notre Dame has. So I get it from that standpoint, but the head-to-head has to matter. So I think there is a strong case for Miami, and they're playing good down the stretch here. It'll be really tough if they don't get in the playoff, because to me, they absolutely feel like a playoff team. Now, Vandy, I think, is interesting. To me, I don't think they get in, but man, it's been a fun year to watch Vandy. It really has. They're right there on the brink. Diego Pavia is going to get a trip to New York. I don't think he wins it, but he's definitely going to go. And hats off to Miami. And there's another coach. I just mentioned a minute ago about Kirk Cignetti was staying at Indiana. Clark Lee just signed an extension at Vanderbilt. And this is a guy that was a hot name too, that probably could have gotten one of these big jobs, or should I say bigger, more high-profile jobs than Vandy, but he wanted to stay there because he's looking around saying, similar to Indiana, like, look, we're in the SEC. I already have what I need to win at this level, right? So it's just interesting how things have shifted in college football from that standpoint, that a lot of guys are staying in place thinking that, look, I've already got what I need. I already play in a major conference. I already have the resources here at the program I'm at. They don't necessarily feel like they needed to take the quote unquote more high profile job. Lane Kiffin did, but a lot of these coaches stayed. Now, I mentioned Georgia, Bama going to play in the SEC title. That's going to be a lot of fun. But look, the other game that we got to talk about here real quick, Texas ruined their perfect season. That's going to be really interesting because, look, Texas A&M is going to get in. We know that, with that being their only loss. But it's going to be really interesting, Alex, to see if Texas can get into the playoff with 3 losses, because you can make a case that Texas is absolutely deserving. They have 3 top 10 wins. I think the one glaring loss that is really hurting their resume is to your Florida Gators, Alex. And I know that's why you're laughing here, because that loss really kills them. I think you can forgive the Ohio State loss. Big, but they've also got those 3 big resume builders in those 3 top 10 wins. What do you make of Texas? Because if a team like Ole Miss does get bumped, my theory is that they might. That opens the door for maybe a team like Texas to sneak into this thing. Is that possible?
Yeah, I think that is, and that's why I said, looking at 8 through 16 or 9 through 16, I said it's going to be interesting to see these coming out tomorrow. I'm sorry, the CFB poll is going to come out tomorrow, and then what happens next week. We're going to get to see what happens next week as well and where these guys are. So it's going to be very interesting. I think that was, again, bad loss by Texas A&M, but it doesn't really disrupt where they're headed to. It just may disrupt their quote-unquote seeding for the most part, but they won't drop lower than probably 6 or 7 at the most. I can't remember everybody else who won behind them, but the Texas Longhorns did put a stamp on and say, hey, we deserve to be in there. And it's not a big jump, but it's a big jump in a sense to go from 16 just to 12, and that's 4, and let alone even if they try to move them up further. There's going to be some losses next week, so we're going to have to see where everybody lands.
Yeah, and I'll say this, there's going to be some outrage too, because this year we did not get a Boise State type of group of 5 team that ran the table and was clearly the best team in the group of 5. We did not get a team like that this year that you can kind of circle and say, okay, you know what? They play at a lower level, but they deserve it. There's a group of 5 team that's going to sneak into this party that probably has no business being here, because they're probably going to be looking at like a 2-loss group of 5 team. And that is going to really rub some fan bases the wrong way, because it is going to bump a very good team, most likely from the SEC or one of these other conferences. These other Power 4 conferences is going to get bumped because of a team like that taking that automatic spot. And that is going to have people asking for change. So it's going to be really interesting kind of how that plays out, because there's going to be some outraged fans, Alex, when that decision does come down on who that team is and who gets eliminated because of it. Before we wrap this up, Alex, let's give out the college football helmet stickers. Who do you got this week?
I'm going to give me the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets defense. The Georgia Bulldogs have been averaging 32 points a game this season. That includes 35 against Texas, 43 against Ole Miss, 44 against Tennessee, even though I know, Brad, you don't like them. but they held them to 16. This game was only a touchdown game, and Georgia did win. This was in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, this game, but that game was 16-9. And I didn't think that game should have been that close the way that Georgia was rolling. So I'm going to give some shout out because this is Haynes King last year. I don't know what Georgia Tech will look like next year, but this is Haynes King last year. They've been They've been a lot of fun the last 2 years, especially this Georgia game that they played the last 2 years. They've made it a lot of fun. So I'm going to give a shout out unconventionally to the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets defense.
You know what, man? I like it because they gave them a chance to win that game. They really did. If Georgia Tech's offense could have gotten anything going in this game, they had a legit chance to make the upset here. With the way that defense played, you're absolutely right. They kept them in that game and really played a heck of a ball game in a losing effort, but a heck of a ball game, no doubt about it. Look, I'm going to give this week's college football helmet sticker to Florida running back Jaden Baugh. 266 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns over rival FSU. I know when you think Florida State at the end of the year, normally there's some big rankings next to these teams, and this is a much more high-profile game in years past. But nonetheless, this was an unbelievable performance for him. So tip of the cap to Jaden Baugh. You get the helmet sticker this week. All right, guys, that is going to do it for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it, PGF Nation. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.